It might not be Halloween yet, but I am going to read you a spooky conservative tale. Woo! Yes, because I don't know why I did that, but there you go. Yeah, I'm going to read you a spooky conservative tale because in reality, you might think that the scariest thing in the world for the Conservatives is what's going on. And oh, yes, it absolutely is. We went over Will Atkinson just this week having his bizarre train rant about how dare these train drivers get paid, 60K a year when someone equally, as well trained, if not, needed for, public transport, pilots can get paid considerably more. But there is another thing that haunts conservative nightmares, and that is PR. Why is PR so scary to conservatives? Well, when you look at PR and at results, very often you can see a future where the Conservatives might win a number of seats, but they will never, ever win enough to be the main party in power. And this terrifies them. It terrifies them to no end. And even though, bear in mind, after this election, we have heard a lot of conversations about PR, which are good. I am glad that those conversations are being happening, not just by Labour, Lib Dem, etc., which we normally hear it from, but also by Conservatives as well. Dare they now start thinking about PR? Well, don't worry, because here comes, your typical Conservative saying, well, you might think PR is a good idea, but let me tell you the spooky, scary horror story of what could happen under PR. Woo. But before we do get into this conservative horror story, please do remember to click on the like, share, and subscribe button down below. There is, of course, the Patreon page down below as well. There's the Buy Me Coffee link. There's the YouTube thank you button. And, of course, there's the Pony Club down below as well. So, as always, thank you very much to all those people who do help and support the channel that way. There is, of course, the thank you button. There's, of course, the like and the share button as well. And, of course, don't forget to leave a comment down below. So, are you sitting comfortably? Are you make sure that all the lights are on? Because I've got to warn you now, this is a pretty spooky tale about what the UK system might look like if we had German-style PR. Nothing truly more conservative or scares a conservative more than PR and Germany. So, we're not going to read all of this because, quite honestly, we've heard most of the arguments before about anti-PR, but I want to go over what he would say, what the consequences would be, because once again, it's the consequences which, when you think about it, aren't that scary and are obviously under this PR system would be pretty obvious. But to like this conservative, Alexander Bowen, who wrote this, it's terrifying and would absolutely cripple a Starmer government. It wouldn't, but we'll get to that in a bit later. Anyway, so this is on Conservative Home, how the German-style proportional representation would have crippled a Starmer government. And of course, Germany is sort of a very federalist system. So here you can see in this picture here, hang on, is it just need to be a little bit bigger? There we go. As you can see here, he split sort of the UK up into sort of these different federalist systems. I would also say this should happen in Scotland as well. I think Scotland, even Wales here, should be split up as well into the different regions as well. But it's his choice. It's his how you do it. I wouldn't think how you do it as well. I think there are better ways to do PR. But there you go. Um, so this is obviously the system. This is what he's split us all up, and he's even revived Wessex randomly. Wessex, you can see down here, reviving the old kingdom at last. But yeah, so this is how he does it. You can see him doing it here, how all the seats were won under first past the post in all of these different constituencies. Then, of course, he does it under the regional proportion, first past the post as well. What would have happened here under those types of potential systems? I don't know how well, of course, he works this out or not, but there you go. But this is what he predicts it would be. So he would say that the majority threshold would be for a single party to have a threshold would be 348. So to win an overall majority, you will need 348 seats. Obviously, he says here, under this type of electoral system, it would just be absolutely impossible for any government to ever really achieve this, and we would be in forever coalitions. In fact, he says it here. Oh, you would end up with this traffic light coalition, as he's dubbed it. So it would be Labour, Lib Dem, Greens, and if you've got Conservatives, there's the Reform, SNP, I think Plaid Cymru, and then other Northern Ireland parties there. So this would be what he would say with the traffic light coalition. And essentially, if we had elected a government under this German style regional PR, this is what would have happened. It would be Labour, Lib Dems, and then Green, and they would be in coalition together. Now, of course, everyone I think would know, or at least even recognize the fact that coalition parties, shockingly, need to work together to get stuff done. And sometimes this does come at saying, well, okay, you can have this brief, you can have that brief. Now, remember, Labour obviously are the majority party. This was, I think, discussed before, if you remember, in the lead up to the 2017 election. There was this talk about there being a progressive alliance, and that Labour should ally with like the Lib Dems, etc., to sort of beat the Conservatives in that. And of course, at the time, you had the then Liberal Democrats leader saying that she should be the Prime Minister. And I always said at that time, no, that's a really stupid idea. You aren't the largest party. That position, whoever is the largest party, gets to be the Prime Minister. And that, of course, would have been at the time Jeremy Corbyn. So, but other positions, I would agree, are up for grabs. So he makes the argument here that you would see somehow everyone's favorite sixth form Green co-leader Carla Denyer take a key portfolio like either the Foreign Office. Again, I do not think Carla Denyer would take the Foreign Office. I think she'd be a terrible Foreign Office Foreign Secretary, but there you go. Whilst Aidan Ramsey, another key party member, would take energy scrutiny or either net zero. Ed Davey would then reprise a role in government, being offered a position or at least being a position to demand either Yvette Cooper's Home Office job or Rachel Reeves' role as Chancellor. So that could potentially happen. I will say to him, yeah, that could eventually happen, because that's what happens in coalitions. You give other people in those other parties key jobs, and you say, this is how we're going to work together. This is how we're going to get stuff done. Because shockingly, that's what you've got to do. You've got to work together. You've got to compromise, because even like lesser parties like the Lib Dems or the Greens could not demand everything they wanted from Labour or even from the Greens or etc. You have to work together. You have to have compromise. And we see this compromise work perfectly well, bear in mind, in every single other European country that has PR, including Germany, by the way, who is woe betiding us should we ever have this system. But and he puts it like this. He says, in short, the Starmer proportional system would now be a complete mess, divided and incapable of responding to events. Why would it be incapable of responding to events? With Reeves' now much loved fiscal black hole still around, but of course with a high income Lib Dem base now needing its pound of flesh, and the Green electorate that completely denies the existence of fiscal constraints, altogether the three-party circle would not be squared. Absolutely, again, not true. Not true. These three parties, while wanting very different things, would have to come together. They would have to make compromises. And if not, well, then that would fall apart. But I think that would go pretty far down the line before they considered a government having to fall apart and having to go for a general election again. And bear in mind, whichever party did not compromise, so if it was the Greens, for example, that did not compromise, Labour and the Lib Dems would turn around and go, well, the only reason this government failed was because the Greens refused to compromise on, I don't know, these budgetary things. You think the Greens would risk that? Because that would be a massive reputational damage to them. They would not risk that, potentially having the best chance of actually potentially being in power they've had if, as he said, Carla Denyer and Adrian Ramsey were, members of the cabinet. Do you think they would risk that? I don't think so. They would have to compromise. They might not like having to compromise, as well, they're seeing down in Bristol at the moment, but that's another story for another time. But, they would have to sort of compromise. That would be the reality. And of course, he goes on, talks about how this is all terrible, etc. But of course, he forgets, in the UK, we've have proportional representation. We've had it for mayoral elections. We have it currently in Scotland, and of course in Wales, and of course Northern Ireland are elected that way. You had regional mayoralships elected under that before they were realized that they were losing all these regional mayoralships, and then decided to take away of the voting system of that's how it was, because that's how they thought they were losing. Turns out not the case, because the regional mayors, especially Labour ones, are going, hey, we want to focus on regional problems and how we can fix these regional inequalities and what we can do to make stuff in the region better. We want to see more investment. The Conservative election crazy policies were nothing like that. But yeah, there you go. So let me know what you think. Was this a scary bedtime story for you? Did you feel a chill run down your spine? But no, honestly, it's a completely, I think, really foolish argument that this guy makes, trying to, of course, scare people into thinking how bad PR. But there are a lot of different styles of PR, and I said at the moment, if we are going to move to PR, one of the things we need to start doing as a PR body, or at least campaigners for PR, starting to really decide what type of PR we want. I think that's what we should be moving to. Now, there's one thing I do actually agree with him on. This style of what we saw, of what he put forward, the German style, I'll tell you what, that would be an amazing model, as he modeled out there, for a second elected chamber. I think that would be a really good thing to see. Like, if you were to say, put that system he was talking about there into, change it for the House of Lords, call it the regional representative chamber, whatever, change the name to something else. I think that would work out pretty well. I think that would be pretty good. If you look at, obviously, what he's predicting here, I think that would be a pretty fair representative body for a second chamber. I think that would be pretty fair. Now, of course, he ignores the argument completely about any second chamber and reforming it to making it an elected body. Instead, focuses on Westminster. But again, multiple ways we can talk about changing Westminster to a proportional representation system. Do we go single transferable vote? Do we go to, ranked choice voting? There's a couple of different systems we could go with. We could maybe even reinvestigate AV voting if they really wanted to. But like I say, it's just to say how many different types of proportional representation there are out there. And of course, other countries have them that do work. Now, let me know what you think down below. But I think actually he's put forward a good system that would work for an elected House of Lords. I think what he's put forward there would be a pretty good representative spread of, for the House of Lords to have a second elected body. Let me know what you think down below. But of course, as for like our main Westminster stuff, there are a lot of different PR. So tell me which one you would like to see for our Westminster, and of course, what do you think to the system he put there for being a House of Lords type of reform, that being elected body. So anyway, thank you very much for watching everyone today, and of course, as always, we'll see you all next time.